Now that we've seen pagination on the interface using HTML and Django Core, let's take a look at how we can do the same thing in the Django REST framework for our API. Django REST framework supplies a nice long page all about pagination. You can see that there are effectively 3 choices that we might want to go and use. Page number works exactly the same way as we saw it working on our interface. Limit offset works a little bit like a database where you say, I would like to limit this number, and the offset is the number of items in the database. So I don't necessarily recommend using this as you are exposing implementation details of your database. And then there is cursor pagination. And cursor pagination is a sometimes food. It's very powerful. It is generally optimal for very large data sets, but it requires that your data set be not quite append only, if you will, but you have to have a specific kind of data that allows you to use cursor pagination to fully take advantage of cursor pagination. Now, to get started, I'm going to come into the base settings in our configuration, and I am going to add a default pagination class. Now, as it turns out, if you omit this, pagination won't work. And I'm simply selecting page number pagination, but you could just as easily replace the end of this string with any of the options here, and that would be your default pagination. Now, I'm being ridiculous for the sake of this demonstration, specifically because we only have 2 blog posts, and so I've set the page size to 1. And with no other work, we end up in a place where if I come over here, you can see that I'm on tag list, but I have a query parameter for page, and I've moved to the 3rd page, but I could easily just come on back. And you can see the browsable API has given us this nice set of links over here that we can browse to and from. But then, of course, as we expect that this is going to be consumed by another computer or another program, we have next and previous links. And now all of our results, instead of being a top-level element, are now included within results. And there is a helpful count, and this is the count of all of our tags, right? So there are 9 tags currently in our database, and that is what we are looking at. Now, if I slide back over here, you can see that I could go the, that's not what I want to show you. You can see that I can go ahead and I can manually override the pagination class on a view set. And I can do this for anything that is going to be inheriting the API view, I think. You know what? Let's go actually double check that while I have you here. cdrf.co, and we can slide in. You can see that if I come down to view set, well, this is not where I want to be. I'm inheriting from model view set. We can see that the Paginate class is actually given to us by the generic API view, not the API view. So generic API view is one of our ancestors, and we can even come down and then begin to expand this. And you could look through and see exactly how pagination class, yes, you can begin to see how it might be used, although I'm not actually finding anything, which is kind of interesting. I'll leave you to search for that on your own. The bottom line is that this is where this is coming from, and this is where you can begin to dive into how it's being used, or, you know, take a look at the model view set and then take a look at how it's being used here. Well, that's fascinating. Anyhow, again, going to leave you to that. So here we have back our tag view set, and you can simply see that I'm explicitly saying that I would like the page number pagination to be set. That doesn't affect any of the other work that we've previously done. Now, if I wanted to enable our user to be able to control the number of items on this page, there are a set of settings that you have to provide your view, which you can read about over here in the configuration. I haven't gone ahead and set that up, as I'm quite happy making sure that everyone is only ever able to see a single tag at a time, because that is a totally valid user experience. Please don't do this. The next item I want to address is what I've done with post view set. So post view set is actually a perfect place to use the cursor paginator. So cursor pagination is a way where we introduce a cursor in our elements, and we then say, yes, we are going to paginate at this moment. And that way, as we are going through our elements, we have an ID, and we then show the certain number of elements around that ID. This is fantastically good if we are going to be going through a very large data set and we always know that we are going to be adding them, or that we are presenting them in a specific order, because that means that our cursor becomes predictable. And this makes it much easier to cache on top of loading from the database much more quickly. So cursor pagination class here for our pagination class is quite powerful. Now, I just want to show you how this is working. So I'm going to browse over here. And you can see that instead of a page, there is a cursor, and this ID is being generated for us by Django REST Framework, and so I can simply hit Next. Now again, I only have 2 blog posts, so this is not much of a demonstration here, but it illustrates the point that I'm trying to make about the cursor. Now for this to work, the cursor has to know about the various fields that you are ordering by. And so for this to work correctly in the model view set, I've had to introduce a filter backend, and this simply allows for filtering of content, as well as specify how we are ordering by default in the cursor pagination, and then which fields we are allowed to order by. Now, because we're using cursor pagination, we want to make sure that our ordering fields are going to follow the rules. So in some other situations, I might be in a position where I could say, oh, well, I would also like to be ordering by title. However, that would make the way cursor pagination works, we would not be gaining all of the advantage from the cursor pagination, because if I add a new blog post, the date is always going to be the latest date. And so I expect that I'm not affecting any of the previous cursors. However, if I'm going to be adding a new blog post, who knows how it's organized alphabetically, and so that may impact both our caching as well as the cursors, and so we are not going to be drawing full advantage, right? It's still going to be quicker because of the way it's organized in the database, I believe, based on my understanding. You should double check that with your own data, but it is in our interest to try and limit this down and really tailor this and take our time to make sure that this is working correctly with the paginator. And just to slide back over here to our post list, you can see that the ordering filters has introduced a new button here as well, where I can say, oh, I'd like it descending or ascending. And instead of having page numbers, I simply have the cursor, which I can go back and forward through, as the concept of a page number no longer really applies. And with that, we've paginated our API. Thanks to Django and Django REST Framework for making that so easy.